Hi, my name's Audrey Snee. I'm the founder of ESTUARY Publishing. It's a small company, just myself at the moment, but I'm employing lots of local people to help me edit, print and design. So it's very much organically local books that I produce. People often ask why I started it. Well, I was a journalist for many, many years. Unfortunately, the world of journalism isn't how it used to be, and making a career and a living in that industry is getting harder and harder. And a conversation I had with a local fisherman, Paul Gilson, started me on my publishing career. This is Paul's book, which I helped publish, because we were talking about a fishing story together, and he'd said to me one day, I think I'm giving up fishing, it's too hard. And I said, funnily that, I think I'm giving up journalism for the same reason. And so I sort of then said to Paul, well, what would you do if you didn't fish, knowing that he'd fished for his entire life? And he said, I'd write, which really intrigued me. So I asked him to send me some of his stories, and I was laughing out loud, and I rang him up and I said, Paul, you have to publish this. So that was the start of my journey, and we had a lot of fun producing this book. It's very much about, not just about fishing, I have to stress, it's very much about the life of fishing folk in the South End area, in Leon Sea. It's also about the fishermen that went to war, and the little boats that left, and the sad story that one didn't return. It's all in the book, actually, because Paul is a skipper of the Endeavour, which is the boat that I know everybody in South End cherishes. So lots of history in there as well, because his family's he's a sixth generation fisherman, so he knows his stuff. At that launch of Paul's soul searching book, a gentleman came up to me and told me he'd written a children's book set in South End in the 18th century. So again, my curiosity was piqued, and I said, oh, let me see it. And again, it really jumped off the page at me. It was a very, very different type of book, in that it tells a history, but in a very fun way, in an adventure of a young girl who meets a young boy. There is friendship, and you can probably guess that maybe romances in time might blossom between them. But they're young and they go on this great adventure, and their problems are that the smugglers don't like the girl because her father is the tax inspector, and the smugglers certainly don't like the boy because he happens to be a gypsy. And they do really target both of them, but through sheer grit and determination and courage, and also with a little help with all their animal friends, they actually become the hero and the heroine of the town. And featuring it is Hadley Castle, the Leon Sea marshes, and Robert, the author, I should introduce him, Robert Howman. He's written 5 or 6 history books, but this was his first endeavour into children's writing, and I can tell you, he won't be too embarrassed, I hope, that he's 77. And he did wonder, is that too old to start writing children's literature? But I can tell you, having read this, no, not at all. He brings all of the excitements that children require in a book, but also, as a parent reading it, you learn, and you know the children are actually learning things without them realising they're learning it. Now, obviously, as I said, I was a journalist for many years, and in between writing magazine articles and newspaper reports, I did put my own thoughts on a book, and it has taken me 15 years, I will admit, to finally get the finished product, but I'm very, very pleased with the end product. It's sort of loosely based on my own experience in Japan. I lived there for 2 years. Now, this isn't about me, this is 2 characters, 2 men from the same family of different generations who find love in Japan. And then disaster and tragedy and family and everything else you can imagine gets in between their relationships. And the one set in 1945 is just after the Japanese have capitulated in the war, and Tokyo is absolutely in ruins. This is truth. I did a lot of research. I went into the School of Oriental and African Studies in London and did a huge amount of research there. Tokyo was obliterated in 2 nights, and that was the 9th and the 10th of March 1945. They dropped thousands of napalm bombs on the city, and the city was made of paper and wood, and it just, a fireball just swept across the city, and more people actually died in Tokyo on those 2 nights than Nagasaki and Hiroshima put together. Obviously the devastating effects of the atom bombs carry on, of course, and I would never try to mean that one is more important than the other, but what it meant was that Tokyo had to start completely from scratch. It had nothing, and it built up to the city we now know it. And that fascinated me, because when I lived in Japan, people didn't really talk about that. They've got on with the future, they've not really dwelt on the past. And now we know that 2 years ago the tsunami hit, and ironically that was on the 11th of March. So we had the 9th and the 10th in 1945 and the 11th in 2011. And those are the two key points that I've used the book, the storyline. Again, because Tokyo, not so much, but the cities to the north have been ravaged by disaster. And again, we have my character, he's searching for his wife, and this is where the book opens. And he cannot find her, and he doesn't know whether he has lost her in the same way that his grandfather lost his love of his life. And I hadn't realised that when I finished the book I had actually written a love story, which wasn't my start of the story. I've chosen to write under a pen name for this, which is Una Rose, only because if you publish it's a lot easier to do that. But that's from all of these books are available from Estuary Publishing. We also stock in all of the main bookshops, and that's one thing I must say actually about this town, is the support of booksellers, events, people like Metal. We're very fortunate for authors in the town. I've set up as well a network. It's called the South End Writers and Artists Network. It's on Facebook, and it's for anybody who's interested in books and in writing to just put their stuff on there, to tell everybody about events, promote themselves, and that's growing. We've I think nearly got 100 members on that.